Hello, and welcome back to It's Our Time podcast with your host, Delal. I am your cousin, your auntie, your friend, or nobody at all. It's all good. All is welcome here. I want to say thank you so much for tuning into my channel and supporting this journey. This is truly a project from my heart, and I hope that it serves our communities for the better. That is my absolute aim. So thanks again for tuning in and being present. I really want to urge you to check out my most recent podcast episode because I did an interview with the CPR rap inventor, Felicia Jackson. It is so important that we as a community support the ingenuity of our people and their inventions and the individuals who are catalyzing powerful and incredible things into this world. We already know that funding for Black women in business is really low at a global scale, but especially in America, as I mentioned in an earlier podcast episode with the Fearless Fund, a fund dedicated to helping Black women in business generate the right support and accrue the right financial support is being challenged in the Supreme Court. So please do your part, show support, share these inventors, share these individuals, what they are doing for our communities. We got to be the backbone for the change that we are activating within our communities. So please check it out and check out the CPR rap. I put all the details in the description of the last episode. So thank you again. We appreciate it. And I'm going to just get right into this week's episode. This is a topic that is so pertinent in our community and has had its time for too long. This is the topic of colorism. Colorism, for those who don't know what it is a it is colorism within the Black community. It is a prejudice or discrimination against individuals with a dark skin tone, typically among people of the same ethnic group. And used in a sentence, colorism within the Black community has been a serious emotional and psychological battle. And I will say that that is really the least of how it's impacted and infiltrated itself into our community. And it is such a severe detriment to us as individuals and to us as a collective. But I want to be very clear that colorism impacts Black women, our darker skinned Black women in our communities far more than any other part of our communities or individuals within our communities. And I really don't want to I just want to talk about it in the real way. I have noticed colorism from a very young age, even though my family came from Sudan, Northern Africa, where colorism is very rampant there too, because we've also had British rule and colonial rule as where it has, presented itself here historically in America through slavery and through the whole concept of the in-house slave and the out-house slave, those as starting factors. But the main point I wanted to make is that there is no difference in colorism in America or across the global reality. Like in my home country, we have names for it. We've had genocides against, other tribes, and it's caused absolute destruction as the oppressive entity that designated race as a superiority and hierarchy way of looking at humanity has desired for it to be. So it's not a shock that colorism breeds violence. And within our communities, right, I want to start to talk about this from the lens of me, right, from myself. I had to become very aware that these ideologies that are these harmful ideologies, these ideologies based in white supremacy, which to me is pink supremacy, because there is power in the words we use. I never looked at whiteness as supreme, and I still do not recognize it as supreme. And to me, that's just my way of lightening the importance that those words give it. So it's just my way. We're gonna call it pink supremacy. I call it white supremacy one time, and then from there it's pink supremacy. Anytime I mention it, you'll know that's what I'm talking about. But that those realities created by pink supremacy is, I'm not going to be absolute from it. I don't live in a vacuum. I'm a human being with a psyche, and that is surrounded in this narrative from as far as I can remember. And I was raised by people who have been impacted by that narrative. I live in a society that perpetuates that narrative day in and day out, in conscious and unconscious ways, in overt ways and in subliminal ways, in acute ways and in macro ways. So this is not something that I can say I am not influenced by, and I myself don't act from in some capacity, you know. And it's really an uncomfortable journey to recognize how these thought patterns manifest in my own life, even though I am very much a lover of my community and a lover of my Black sisters. And I think it's because of that love that I am willing to look and dissect my own brainwashing, and looking and to dissect my own behaviors and ways that I support, or what role do I play in the grander scheme of colorism, whether supporting it unconsciously, enacting in it unconsciously, or becoming aware of my thoughts, behaviors, patterns, and the role that I play in the grander scheme of it. Now, this is definitely not a conversation that's going to be had one time and is done. I'm just opening this up so we can start to bring to light the impact that it has had on our community, on the separation of us and our sisters, right? And then also beginning to understand the difference of life that it creates for each of us, depending on how it affects us on that scale of colorism, right? And how it affects our self-image, how it affects our ability to move freely in the world, how it affects our safety. Because if we're going to talk real about it, racism has deeply affected and wounded the value that Black men place on themselves. And oftentimes, as colorism will teach Black men that the closer you are to whiteness, then that helps you societally, and not for some reason, and it tells the psyche of the inferiority of a Black man, that their proximity to whiteness in any way, even their proximity to whiteness within the Black community, i.e. being with lighter women, is somehow going to help their inferiority complex in the world. But really what ends up happening is a lot of that inferiority complex turns into severe violence against Black women that they end up being in relationship with. Especially Black women of a darker tone are subjected to extreme violence that is perpetuated by colorism. It's really important, at the end of the day, it's important to look at what is affecting our communities, how we are starting the conversations in them. And it feels disorienting sometimes. It feels disorienting because there are so many layers to it. And there's a desire to break through these illusions, to break through these concepts and ways of living in life and relating to ourselves and relating to each other. When I relate to myself as lighter black, a lighter black woman, I relate to the world a certain level of agreement to where they have subjected me. Like I'm saying, okay, yes, I am lighter, and I can feel in the societal norm uh, that there's certain things I'm less likely to be subjected to or to experience. And there are certain tokens I might have access to. But at the end of the day, when I look at it, when I examine it, I really begin to recognize that it means I don't live knowing who I am as a human being. I forfeit when I ascribe myself to this system and how it wants me to view me and my skin tone in relation to uh, my community and in relation to the larger sphere of race and skin color. I recognize I forfeit being Dalal. I forfeit being a human being in her autonomy as a soul who knows how she wants to live, by what values she wants to live, by what principles she wants to live, and by how she wants to show up for her sisters and her brothers in her community, right? But the more I am able to bring to light and bring to surface these programmings within myself and recognize and become aware of them within my community and disrupt them as often as I can and call them out as often as I can, then I begin to have a semblance of sense of who I actually am as a human being. And then I'm able to see my brothers and sisters as the beautiful, diverse, valuable, inherently valuable souls that they are. And I begin to help my sisters and my brothers weed out the psychological infestation that pink supremacy has done on our concept of self, our relatability to self, and therefore our relatability to one another. I I don't give a hoot about whiteness and its agenda for the world and its agenda for how we are supposed to be living and relating to life. It is a constant obstruction of the psyche. It's a constant obstruction of the safety in one's body. And it creates constant internal battles within ethnic groups. And we have reached the red zone. We have reached the red zone. We are in an emergency state of eradicating these ways of thinking and being able to put full forth effort into dismantling systems that can no longer operate in our communities. We cannot stand for it any longer. Like Malcolm X was talking about, who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose? Who taught you to hate the skin that you are in? That does not belong to us. But if we make it ours, if we fall into the trap that there is anything to be gained at all by playing into the system, anything, and I mean anything to be gained, there is nothing that this system can give you that is close to even being as valuable as who you are. Nothing. Not all the money, not all the power, not anything, because all that is constructed, but you are God made. That cannot be touched. That cannot be measured by this material world. That cannot be measured by somebody assigning you, or a society or a global world trying to feed you a lie about who you are or about who we are. And I I stand to call these things out, and I'm so glad that I got to share this today. And I'm not focused on how it comes across anymore, because I recognize that these things have been stuff that I've not talked about. I've not shared and expressed exactly these experiences. I've just been quiet my whole life, from a young girl to now, just experiencing, but silencing and silencing and silencing. So ride the journey with me as I continue to find my voice and as I continue to rise in it. And I have a lot of love for my community. I have a lot of love for my brothers and sisters, and I know that we have a lot of love for one another. And I just want us to continue to shed light on that love and recognize that love is willing to go to dark places. Love is willing to do the work. Love is willing to call itself out. Love is willing to call its community in. Love is willing to go the extra mile. Love is willing to abandon the status quo. That's what love is. And that's what we'll continue to do. So thank you so much for tuning in. Please support your community, support yourself. And I hope you have had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Oh man, I am ending this with a lot of passion, a lot of gratitude. And as always, free Palestine, free Sudan, free Congo, free Tigray, and free any nation that is pushing the world to wake up and to fight back against any and all terroristic mentalities and ideologies, colonial, pink supremacy, all of it. I'll see y'all next time. Thank you.